All right, guys, 5.2, we're going to start talking about stratification and its impact. For this outcome or this component, we are going to be talking specifically about socioeconomic class and race. All right, so social stratification can take a lot of different, or we could use a lot of different examples. We could talk about class, race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation. We are going to focus, though, on our top two here. So what class are people in and what race are people are people. All right, a couple things we're going to look at, or ways in which we're going to look at these. From a functionalist and a conflict perspective, functionalists would view that this stratification, whether it be race or socioeconomic class, comes as a necessary feature, that there are different roles that need to be performed, and those roles each have different rewards to them, that both race and social class allow us to have stronger connections, okay, allow us to be part of groups. The conflict theory, though, would look at the issue of social, economic class and race and look at how that comes to be out of competition, all right, where it is competing over scarce resources, whether it be power or a natural resource. And so therefore, one group, okay, takes advantage of another group. They exploit a certain class. So maybe the rich taking advantage of the poor, or whites taking advantage of Latinos. All right, so the group in power shapes both public policy and the opinion of others in the other groups, okay, whether we're looking at race or socioeconomic class. So let's start with class. In the United States, we divide into 6 different groups. So you have the upper class, the upper middle, the lower class, the working poor, and the underclass. You can kind of see here the percentage of the population, what kind of jobs are examples, and what type of education is needed. Most of our community here falls into this lower middle class. Right, so lower middle class or working class. This is the majority of our families here in Bradley, Bourbonnais, St. George area. All right, now a lot of times the social class is based on your job. All right, with that job you have a certain income level and a certain level of prestige within society. It's not limited to that though. Family size comes into play, home ownership, any other assets that a family or individual may have. All right, so you can kind of see here how we view the most prestigious jobs, physicians, lawyers, all right, all the way down to scores with much lower prestige, like janitors and waiters or waitresses. All right, now class matters, okay, because with class you have a certain set of norms and values that go with those. And we talked about Ruby Payne's studies in the 3 major classes, so the upper, middle, and lower class. Some things common for our middle class, this would be upper and lower middle class. Deferred gratification, okay, being able to wait because something good will happen down the road. Verbal skills, being rational, okay, being courteous. And then in the lower class, you see more emphasis on the now, the instant gratification, motor skills, spontaneity, more about sensuality or sexuality. So those in the short term, okay? And that's going to impact the way in which someone lives their life and what's important to them. All right, so just taking a look here, when we're talking about socioeconomic class in the United States, I thought it might be helpful to see some comparisons. So this is in particular poverty, okay? So for a family of 4 making under $25,000 for family income. You can kind of see some connections here. There's some connections with race, right? So the higher the bar graph here, the more people that you have living in poverty in those racial groups. We're going to talk about race next. Same with age. All right, you guys being under 18 are much more likely to be in this category. All right, and then women, okay, is more common than men. All right, so these things, these social stratifications are not, there's a lot of connection, okay, between race, gender, socioeconomic class, a lot of overlap that you may see. All right, so then let's talk race next, okay? Now, in class, we talked about how many different races you could think of. We talked about what makes somebody white. All right, but race really does not exist in a biological or scientific way. All right, rather, it's how society wants to define it. Now, in the United States, we primarily define race as a mix of biological traits and then norms, so cultural characteristics. A good example would be those of you guys who view yourself as Caucasian and have some Irish heritage. You would most likely, you would view yourself as white. All right, but if we went back to 1800s in the United States, all right, just before around the time period of like the Industrial Revolution, Civil War, those of you guys that are Irish would not have been considered white. Okay, you would not have been socially considered a Caucasian. But now, 2017, you do. Same thing with Italians, Greeks, and other Southern Europeans. So there's a social construction aspect to this. In understanding race, I think it'll be helpful to know the difference between race and ethnicity. So race, a group of inherited physical characteristics, than whom others view you as distinct groups. So in the United States, we typically talk about Blacks, whites, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans. Not limited to that, but those are our primary groups. All right, ethnicity then is a share of common cultural background, common sense of identity. So a little bit different there, not really including the physical characteristics such as skin color. All right, so when we're talking about the impact of race, I wanted you to be able to see kind of what are we talking about in the United States. So when looking at the U.S. Census is where these stats come from. We have about 77% of our population that considers themselves to be Caucasian. All right, 13% will fill out the census as Black, 17% as Hispanic. Right, you can see. Now you are allowed to mark more than one box. Okay, so you can mark biracial both on the census, college applications, job applications. All right, so you're able to identify in some different ways than what's listed up here. All right, so some ways in which race impacts people. All right, so we see inequalities in our workplace and in our income distribution. All right, people of color, so Blacks, Latinos, are less likely to achieve high level of education, therefore having lower paying jobs. Right? They're also more likely to interact with our law enforcement. Right? So you can see our federal offenders for different drugs here. Okay, whites 16%, 7%, blacks 26%, 78%, Hispanics, right? 54%, 13%. Right? So you're much more likely to interact with law enforcement. Now, when a sociologist studies this, they're going to look at, is it really that Blacks and Hispanics are using drugs more, or is it that they're getting caught more, right? Is their interaction with law enforcement, the fact that they interact more likely, going to impact the fact that they are getting caught more often? Are they being targeted? All right, so we will end there. We're going to talk more about how do socioeconomic class and race and how that connect to deviance and crime in component 3. The end.